What happens when ancient wisdom meets modern psychology? When the sacred art of healing transcends the boundaries of traditional therapy? I'm Jessica, and welcome back to Awaken Your Authentic Self. Today, we're diving deep into a conversation that's been calling to so many of us on this journey of authentic self-discovery. We're sitting down with someone who has spent over 2 decades bridging the worlds of traditional psychotherapy and spiritual awakening. Someone who believes that true transformation happens when every dimension of our being is invited into awareness. I'm talking about Harmony Kwiker, psychotherapist, author, educator, and the founder of the Institute for Spiritual Alignment. Harmony isn't just teaching therapists how to hold sacred space for healing. She's showing us all how to reconnect with our innate spirituality as the ultimate catalyst for transformation. If you've ever wondered how to honor both your psychology, your psychological depth, and your spiritual essence, if you felt called to integrate these worlds into your own healing journey, or if you're simply curious about what it means to be an awakened therapist, then this conversation is going to light something beautiful within you. So settle in, open your heart, and let's explore what it truly means to awaken our authentic selves with the wisdom of Harmony Kwiker. Welcome, Harmony, and thank you so much for sharing this sacred space with us here today.
No, thank you so much, Jessica. I love listening to you. Just even that in that intro just lights me up, because I do believe that all dimensions of who we are essential in service of integrating deep transformation and embodying the authentic self.
Oh, I can't wait to get into this with you. Harmony, you've been bridging traditional psychotherapy and spiritual awakening for over 2 decades. Can you share a pivotal moment when you realized this integration wasn't just possible, but essential for true transformation?
Absolutely. So my story actually begins when I was quite young. I was 6 years old when I started practicing transcendental meditation. I had grown up in a family of healers and had, experienced many different healing practices throughout my life. And in my meditation practice, my intuitive senses were heightened. I was very young, and so I was very open. And I started to notice that I could see subtle energy, which is the expression of a person's life force energy. I could see where it was blocked. I could see where it was open and full and healthy. And I was really sort of perplexed about why I could see this, but nobody else was talking about it.
Right.
And, over the years, I lost that ability, and then I regained it at different times in my life. But I decided to study traditional psychotherapy because I wanted to understand why clinical spaces felt so dull to me and lacking of true healing.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to understand how I could bring more fullness and deep transformation into the world of healing. And so after I graduated from the clinical psychology program that I went to in Seattle, Washington, I started my own private practice, and I was sitting with clients, and doing the interventions that I had been taught felt very dull to me,
Mm-hmm.
lacking of depth and aliveness. And all of a sudden, my metaphysical eyes could see the blocked energy in my client's heart.
Oh.
And yeah, when I asked my client what they noticed, they said nothing about their heart, which also perplexed me. Like,
Mm-hmm.
why can I see this and this isn't something that feels relevant to my client? And so I just decided to ask, what do you notice in your heart now? And my client said, I feel this deep pain, like an almond shape, very dense. So the client could feel something, but they just didn't think it was noteworthy to tell me.
Right.
And and so I invited them to bring awareness to the sensation in their heart and just honor their heart and listen to what it was holding. And together we started to really unravel this accumulated energy that the heart was holding. And it was so profound and so deep that in that moment, I realized that honoring the unseen, our intuitive senses, which come in many forms, is essential to bridging that divide between a clinical intervention and deep transformation. Because by listening to the unseen, we're really listening to not only the innate wisdom of the container itself, but our client's innate wisdom. And we're following that as the guide for their healing.
That is beautiful. What a gift. Now, you mentioned that moment in your journey. How does that insight manifest differently when you're working with trauma survivors versus those experiencing spiritual emergence?
I would say it doesn't occur much differently to me because what regardless of the degree of trauma that a
Hmm.
person is experiencing, being witnessed in the deepest way, beyond thoughts, beyond body, like really being deeply seen and attuned to, is so affirming of a person's humanity. I have clients say to me often, like, after I offer a deep attunement, they'll say, I do exist. I am real. Because in
Mm,
those moments of trauma,
right.
we feel invisible. We're not actually being seen for our experience. And so that witness is deeply healing. And a spiritual emergence is, it's similar. It's the integration happens through the witness. And when we witness our clients accurately, we're meeting them at what I call the sacred boundary,
Okay.
the place where we contact our clients as they are without imposing our ideas onto them.
Right.
So when I talk about spirituality, I'm not talking about spiritual ideas. I'm talking about the innate wisdom of the client themselves interacting with my innate wisdom.
That's remarkable. Now, Harmony, I love your Awaken therapist model
Mm.
and how it incorporates 8 dimensions from awake awareness to somatic intelligence. Which dimension do you find therapists struggle most to access? And how do you help them develop that capacity?
That's a great question. And if I'm really honest, I think the traditional models of therapy actually limit therapists in accessing all models, including psychology, which might be surprising to some who listen. And the reason I say that is because most therapists position themselves as the expert,
Right.
and a therapeutic container can feel like if you're a client, like you're under a microscope being analyzed, where somebody's trying to figure you out or dissect you in some way. And and it's so reductive because like each person is multidimensional.
Correct.
And if we only focus on figuring somebody out and diagnosing what's wrong, we're missing who they actually are and the wisdom of how they've learned to survive and adapt to a world that is not designed for their well being. And so when we're really listening to the wholeness of an individual, all of those dimensions intersect. We're not trying to separate people in detached parts. So we're not looking at spirituality as being anything separate from the body, the mind, the subtle energy, the shadow aspects that have been disowned. It's all part of the whole of who a person is.
I wish when I was in therapy during my first marriage, I would have had a therapist like that because you're right. It was very dry. It was very like, well, why are you here? Like everybody's
Mhm.
listening and like they're just writing things down. And it's like, what are you writing? And why are we not really communicating? Like, you act like you know me and
Abs-
you're trying to tell me something, but you don't know who I am. You know what I'm telling
mhm.
you, but are you truly listening to me?
Absolutely. I've experienced that too as a client, and it can feel so disempowering
Yes,
and a little confusing too. Like, well, this is the place where I'm coming for healing and I'm leaving feeling more like identified with my symptoms and more lost.
exactly. Well,
Yeah, the thing that I'm pointing to also is having a clinician engage in what we call the I thou relationship, which
mhm.
is um, a concept that was developed in the 1930s by a philosopher named Martin Buber. And when we engage in the I thou, we are having an interaction between two whole individuals. So when I'm sitting in the seat of clinician, I'm a whole being and I'm authentically engaging in the therapeutic process. from the sensations in my body, from intuitive insight, through my thoughts, through curiosity, and so on. And I'm honoring my client as a whole individual. And this is contrasted with the I-it, which is what we were talking about with traditional therapy,
Right.
where the therapist is looking at the client as an object, somebody other to fix and change and figure out.
That makes perfect sense. Now, the shadow dimension in your model. How do you help therapists work with their own shadow material before they can safely guide clients through that territory?
I love that question. It's a good question because it really points to the way that we actually can't serve our clients if we're not looking within.
Hmm.
We can't. And, most of my students and therapists who I mentor and teach really say that they understand and see themselves more clearly just through learning therapy with me. And the reason for that is this is a model to embody. And so we bring our embodied wisdom with us, our full integrated self, not to say that we need to be perfectly healed and have everything figured out in order to do this, but we definitely need to be in the active process of integrating anything that we've disowned. And so, I mean, in all honesty, just learning how to do this with clients, therapists refer to their own awareness of themselves as they're deepening that understanding, and they can't unsee once they really see what they've been disowning within themselves. And honestly, my favorite part of my work is supervising therapists and helping them bring more awareness to what's coming up inside of them as they sit with clients, because it really can be quite damaging to not look within as we sit with clients in particular. Because this work is transpersonal, meaning beyond personal identity, where we're accessing non-ordinary states of consciousness, um, anything within us that arises is calling us into greater wholeness. And it really requires that we lean in and welcome and embrace what we discover within ourselves.
That's beautiful. That really is. Now, Harmony, you also have a podcast, The Awaken Therapist.
Yes.
You emphasize honoring clients' innate spirituality as the catalyst for healing. Can you share a powerful example where a client's spiritual wisdom completely shifted the therapeutic direction?
Oh, I have endless stories, and I can feel my heart just like bursts open with the question, Jessica.
Aw.
I love it so much because, like, in truth, in the 20 plus years that I've been doing this, I have seen over and over again how healing is made possible only by the client's innate spirituality. There's nothing that I do to heal anybody. I create a container. I'm a clear reflection. I facilitate some things, but I'm not the healer. The
Mhm.
client is the healer themselves, and reconnecting with that, with the beauty and clarity and innocence of the life force is really where the deep repair happens. And so in this work, really what we're doing is we're noticing at first everything that is not innate. So what's been learned, what's been acquired, adaptive survival strategies, and we're co-regulating with the client, because what we've learned through neuroscience is that when somebody is dysregulated, they lose access to the part of the brain that's responsible for spiritual experiences. So it's called the parietal lobe. And when the nervous system is dysregulated, the parietal lobe loses access to higher consciousness, intuition, that sense of belonging and mystical experiences, because all of the energy is mobilized for survival.
Right.
And so as we're noticing the acquired strategies and ideas that live in the personality habits, we're bringing more awake awareness to those. Meaning, I'm not trying to analyze them or figure them out. I'm just inviting my client to shift into their witness mind and just see and listen. to those patterns, because I believe that embedded within those patterns are actually the medicine that the client needs.
Right.
Meaning we don't need to get rid of them. We just need to listen to them and like deeply listen, not even to understand, but just so that that part could be heard. And and then ultimately, through my questions and um, creative explorations that I collaborate with my clients on, a client will just, have the deep epiphany and the deep clarity and feel this their embodied wisdom and their soul fully seated in their body, because we're incorporating the neurobiology of co-regulation, the mindfulness and clarity of awake awareness, along with listening to what the client really needs from themselves in each moment as they touch each aspect of themselves. And so when a client arrives deeply into their seat of being, it's a sacred moment of a deep return to their innate spirituality, because we've been listening to their innate spirituality every step of the way.
Wow. Now, what is your own internal experience during that type of session? Like, how would you say your spiritual awareness impacts the therapeutic field?
Hmm. Yeah. So, I mean, it's interesting because I arrived to a session and I very much have a personality that wants people to like me. And this
Mhm.
was my biggest this was my biggest obstacle when I was a new therapist, because the part of my personality that wants people to like me doesn't want to illuminate the shadow, doesn't want to confront incongruence,
Mm.
doesn't want to do something that I think might have them not like me. And so I really worked diligently with my personality habits as a new clinician. And I encourage all therapists that I work with to do this as well. And and once I was able to hold space from a place within me that is not my personality, I would have these fascinating experiences in my consciousness, um, where it almost looks like a crystal matrix of everything the client is saying coming together in order, just like a natural organismic like clarity. And somehow I was able to find how to put words to what I was seeing. And my clients were feeling incredibly seen, and they could understand themselves more in that way too. So most of my sessions, my clients' eyes are closed.
Right.
And this is in part because for two reasons. One, when our eyes are closed, we optimize our interoceptive awareness, which is our eighth sense, which is that ability to sense inside of our body. That's called interoception. And so when my clients' eyes are closed, my personality is more receded as well. And so I'm holding space from awake awareness and sort of looking up at the inherent intelligence of the field itself. I'm not in my mind, my ordinary mind,
Right.
and I have my body is like a tuning fork, if you will. Like I can feel in my body every place where there's stuck energy in my client. So I'm a clear channel for their experience.
That is so interesting. As a Reiki master, I kind of do the exact same thing. I remember my teacher telling me, you should be working with your eyes open. And it's like for me innately, my eyes close and I just go to where they're blocked and I feel it. Where if my eyes are open, I feel like I don't even know how to explain it. It's almost like with my eyes open, I feel like I'm forcing something or looking for something. But when
Mhm.
my eyes are closed, it's just like I'm tuned into a different field
Yeah.
and I just naturally gravitate towards where it is that they need healing.
And the important thing about this is that we all have different sensitivities, like our capacities for our sensitivities vary. And so, for your teacher, having eyes open, that person might have been able to access their sensitivities that way. And then you can with your eyes closed. And so, I think it's important, like when I'm teaching, I love it when I see a student who has a type of intuition that I don't have.
Hmm.
And it just excites me to no end because it's just not how I'm designed. And I think that's the beauty of humanity, you know?
Is that we're all different. I mean,
Yeah.
and this is like a very simple kind of thought process, but it brings me back to even my art class in college as an art minor. Them telling me, okay, here's a plant and this is what I want you to paint. And I'm looking at it, that doesn't work for me. I'm an abstract artist. So I
Right.
would try to do what she wanted me to do and it didn't come out right. But when I would do it my way, she didn't see my vision, but I saw exactly what was in front of me.
Absolutely. It's a beautiful analogy. It's beautiful.
Oh, now, Harmony, as lead Gestalt faculty at Naropa, you are training the next generation of transpersonal counselors. What
Yeah.
specific quality or awareness do you see as most crucial for therapists before they can truly hold sacred therapeutic space?
Mm. It's such a good question. And I really want to just check in with my whole being to answer that question because I mean, it's in some ways it varies person to person because, as we were just talking about, each person has their own capacities. But if I were going to narrow it down to one capacity before being ready to really hold that sacred space, I believe that it's the ability to recognize their own personality and shift into awake awareness so that they can stay seated in themselves and meet their client at the contact boundary, at the sacred boundary. Um, yeah, because when a therapist holds space from their ordinary mind or from their personality, they actually inhibit the potential of transformation. And this is where the therapist feels frustrated or incompetent, and the client feels stuck, and they sort of just cycle in the same pattern. And so the ability to differentiate from the mind
Mhm.
and shift into awake awareness and really stay in your own source of energy at the midline of your body. That's sort of three answers, but they all come down to one skill,
Absolutely.
which is staying in contact with yourself as you are.
So, not everybody really, even if this is something that someone was interested in doing, everybody may not be, I mean, I wouldn't say not capable, but maybe just not 100% ready for that type
Mhm.
of lesson.
Mm. Yeah, because I teach in a transpersonal program, all of my students are interested in the transpersonal realm and in mindfulness-based therapy.
Okay.
So there's the passion is there already, and my students range from like early 20s to their 50s or 60s even sometimes. And so developmentally, there's just a range of where each person is at and what their capacity is.
Have you ever had students that were that willing and thought that they were ready and they just weren't?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And what
It's very
happens at that
humbling.
point?
Yeah, they need to learn how to hold space for that humility, and to just really humbly be with themselves as they are. And that's the beginning of increasing that capacity, because letting go of the ego attachment to doing it a certain way is really the first step in being able to let go in relationship with the client. I believe that therapists hold a very high bar for themselves. I mean, I I've seen how people become therapists because they want to do good and they want to be good. And because this work is so confronting at any place within us that needs our attention for integration and healing and transformation, we touch those places in this work, and that's the beauty of it.
It definitely sounds beautiful. And I really wish, my wish would be for every therapist out there to tune in to this, listen to this, and reach out to you.
Thank you.
Because,
It
wow.
it's why I created my training institute. I'm on my second cohort right now, and so I'm training therapists who've already graduated with their degrees to learn how to hold space in this transpersonal way.
Thank you. Now, Harmony, you've written that all symptoms are adaptive and all healing is guided by innate spirituality. How do you help therapists shift from seeing pathology to recognizing the adaptive wisdom beneath presenting problems?
Well, I think it begins with how a person sees themselves, how they listen to their own symptoms. Just taking, for example, nervous system dysregulation. It's very common when somebody feels dysregulated, let's just say anxious and hyperarousal, to resist their experience, to try to make it go away and say that they're trying to regulate their nervous system and it's not working. I've heard it countless times in my life,
Mm-hmm.
in my career. And so to me, that's an indicator that the person is seeing their symptoms, their experience as bad and like they need to go away. And so that's the way that they're relating to themselves.
Hmm.
But when we learn to notice the sensations in our body, turn towards them with awareness and gentle, loving presence, we can ask those sensations, what do you need from me right now? And then we can give ourselves what it is that we need. And this is a very simple self attunement, being responsive to our own inner experience and staying connected to ourselves in moments of arousal, at moments of dysregulation. And so it's really just the way that we treat ourselves is the way we treat other people. And when I'm teaching, I definitely create exercises and practices for therapists to begin learning this. I start every class by teaching some degree of how to do what I just described in terms of nervous system regulation.
Right.
But all along the way, they're learning how to be with themselves in this nonviolent way so that they can be with their clients in a nonviolent way. And I use that word very intentionally because I do think that in many ways, traditional therapy is quite violent, saying this is bad, we're going to sever this pathology out of here. Judgment isn't allowed. This thought isn't allowed. Suicidal ideation isn't allowed, and then you'll be fine. And so even the darkest thoughts to me are adaptive. There's a reason they're there and they're
Right.
all welcome in the light of awareness.
That makes, my goodness gracious. Like I said before, I wish you would have been my therapist.
I love that.
Because
Thank you.
I was just in such a dark place for so long. And when talk about trauma, I grew up with trauma. I grew up in a traumatic household. So my whole formative years were traumatic in one way, shape, or another, up into through my first marriage. So when I finally went to someone and fully just wanted to find healing and find someone to just understand and help me to release or just even see what I couldn't see, I just didn't get that. I didn't get that at all. What I got almost was like, well, you should do this, or, you shouldn't do this. And it was just, how are you helping me?
Mhm.
I felt
Mhm.
worse
Yeah,
and not better.
absolutely. And that last piece you just said is such an important point. When a therapist thinks that they know what somebody else should do, it is such a misuse of power. It absolutely is. When we are in full right use of power, we are honoring our client's sovereign will, their deep knowing, and we're supporting them and reconnecting themselves with that because trauma has us disconnect from our sovereign will to give our will over to the person who we are in that traumatic experience with. Like that's how we adapt and survive. And so by inserting our will onto a client is really re-traumatizing.
Yes, it really was. And it turned me off completely to therapy.
Yeah. Yeah.
It said, basically, it was like anything that you were trying to tell me, I can tell myself. And
Mhm.
I basically did my own healing by going
Yeah.
in deep and just recognizing patterns and seeing why things happened the way they did and why I allowed myself to be in certain situations or feel a certain kind of way. And I ended up doing all this work by myself. But
Beautiful.
when you're paying someone, it'd be nice for them to be able
Yeah.
to help you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's just to me, it's just like a beautiful reflection of your spirit and your brilliance. And And I'll say the similar for me. I was so disheartened by therapy. I like instead of going to therapy, I'm going to try to change therapy. And
Well, good for you.
yeah,
And you know
thank
what?
you.
Maybe for you, that was truly your calling, you know, your
Mhm,
turning point right there by experiencing it firsthand and realizing what was lacking and
mhm,
listening to your spirit and it guiding you towards how to fix it
mhm.
or at least make
Yeah.
it better for others.
Yeah, I mean, I'm honestly surprised by how much I love therapy given given how much I didn't when I started. I get so enlivened by my work because my students and the therapists I work with are genuinely want to learn how to be better, and it's so affirming to me. I fall deeper and deeper in love with humanity every day.
That's beautiful. That's exactly what you want from your students, and that's what a student wants from their teacher.
Mhm.
Now, Harmony, I
Yeah.
would love to talk about your 3 books.
Okay.
The Awaken Therapist, Reveal, Embody the True Self Beyond Trauma and Conditioning, and Align, Living and Loving from the True Self. They seem to trace a beautiful progression from professional training to personal embodiment to relationship integration. Can you share what each book represents in your own journey of awakening and what you hope readers discover at each stage?
Yeah, so Reveal was the first book I wrote, and it's a memoir. It's a self-help memoir. And I'll just share quickly that I had this awakening in my 20s, and I started to write a book, and I spent years writing different iterations of a book. And it was a little bit tormenting, if I'm honest, because it wasn't coming out how I wanted it to come out. And eventually I submitted a manuscript to a well-known publisher, and they said to me, this would read better as a memoir. And this was back before memoirs were popular. And I was horrified because I wanted to be an expert. I did
Mhm.
not want to share all of my shadow with the world
Right.
and all my pain. And I stopped writing for 2 years. And then one day I was just walking by the creek with my dog, and I could see the first sentence of Reveal. It just came into my consciousness. And I started writing that memoir. It took me 2 years, and it's very vulnerable. When people read it, they usually come to me in tears and thank me because they feel like if I could do it, they could do it.
Right.
It's my full sort of my full circle gestalt, which is like a completion, a whole configuration um, that really illuminates how I learned to embody my true self. And so after that, I decided to go back to writing a self-help book, and that's Align, Living and Loving from the True Self. And Align is essentially it's the course that I teach, but in self-help form. So it's through a Gestalt therapy lens and a transpersonal counseling lens. And the first half of the book is really about doing your own deep inner work. I had one reviewer say that the book is similar to it can be the equivalent of like 20 years of really good psychotherapy because it's very detailed
Love
in
that.
terms of there's like the theory, there's my own personal story, and then there's exercises. And the second half of the book is learning how to embody this sacred space within yourself and bring that into relationship. And then my third book, The Awakened Therapist, Spirituality, Consciousness, and Subtle Energy in Gestalt Therapy. It's the textbook for my class at Naropa, and it's also the textbook that I'm using for my training. And, it's interesting because all of the textbooks that I was assigning and working from were all written by men, and they were very heady, very heavily based in theory,
Mhm.
but not any real intuitive, like, how do I actually do this? And I could see my students like liking the theory, liking the way that I taught, but not like there needed to be a bridge. And so I wrote this book similar to the outline of Align, where there's a section of theory, there's what I call lessons from the therapy room, so
Mhm.
stories of my work with clients, and then exercises that really teach how to do this. And then I've actually written a fourth book called Holistic Co-Regulation, A Practitioner's Guide to Working with Chronic Dysregulation. And I also assigned that book. That's more recent. They're all kind of recent, but that's the newest one.
When did this one come out? And why did I not
Um,
find that one?
it came out, gosh, I think probably 4 or 5 months ago.
Okay.
And
Well,
I decided to
congratulations.
thank you. I decided to self-publish that one because I really wanted to offer practical tools of working with chronic dysregulation and trauma for my training institute. And so I wanted to get it out before my first cohort had started.
You just do incredible work. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thanks. Thank you. I just very much enjoy just hearing your perspective as a Reiki master and also as a person on the journey, as we all are.
As we all are, exactly.
Hmm. Hmm.
Well, Harmony, what a profound gift you have shared with us today. Your wisdom about bridging the sacred and the clinical, about seeing symptoms as adaptive wisdom, about honoring our innate spirituality as the catalyst for healing. It all feels like such a beautiful permission slip for all of us walking this path of authentic self-discovery. Thank you so much for reminding us that true transformation unfolds when every dimension of our being is invited into awareness. And thank you for the sacred work you're doing in training the next generation of awakened healers.
Thank you.
To everyone listening, if Harmony's words resonated with your soul, if you feel that gentle stirring of recognition as she spoke about the interconnectedness of all dimensions of healing, I invite you to hit that like button and let your heart respond. Also, you will find all of Harmony's links in the show's description. And if you're ready to dive deeper into this intersection of psychology and spirituality, if you want to explore more conversations that honor both our human depth and our spiritual essence, then subscribe to Awaken Your Authentic Self, because we have so many more sacred conversations coming that will support you in rising to your fullest expression. So until next time, please keep awakening, keep authentic, and remember that you are already whole, you are already wise, and your healing is guided by your own innate spirituality. Stay blessed, beautiful souls.